countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, I don't care how much it applies to the book we're reading. No!
I thought I could get away with it. I didn't think you were serious.
There's a good one. Not that garbage.
45. Hold on. Hold your tiara. Let me put it on the record player.
See, that's much better. Does that calm your nerves, Chad?
I was spinning like a whirling dervish just waiting for that to happen. My outfit kept changing over and over and over again. Didn't make a lick of sense.
Welcome back to The Last Comic Shop. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, J.A. Scott and Chad Smith, who really hates that Wonder Woman song that showed up in the Zack Snyder movies. Boy, he hates it.
It crushes me because the Zack Snyder casting in that universe of movies of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is pitch perfect until you get to the music that introduces her, which is like nails on a chalkboard taking a dump on your desk.
It's like a Cleveland's themer.
It gets you to Star-Spangled Undies in a bunch.
Star-Spangled Steamer.
We've also got Mikey Wood, who is our DC aficionado, bringing him back for another DC episode. If you haven't guessed, we're talking about Wonder Woman on today's show. We're talking about actually the recent series that Tom King's been writing of Wonder Woman. We're going to be covering the first trade called Outlaw, Volume 1 of this Wonder Woman run. Mikey, do you like that song? Do I like
the Wonder Woman theme from the Zack Snyder movie?
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I do. I don't it doesn't hold the nostalgia like the Wonder Woman TV show theme has a nostalgia for me, but I don't get it. I don't get why he chose that particular thing, but I like it
as a musical cue to say Wonder Woman is here. Why would you do that?
Yeah, well, like once it's associated with her, when you hear it, you're like, oh, yes. You know, like I get excited about that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the logic behind it, but I dig it.
All right. Jace, why don't you be the tiebreaker one way or the other? We got one yay, one nay. What do you say?
See, I'm partial to Hans Zimmer. I like him as a composer, so I don't mind the Wonder Woman musical theme note. It's not as good as the Dune theme note, which is much better. That thing from Dune, but it's all right.
See, I was going to say Wonder Woman, it would make sense for her to come on screen to some kind of choral thing that had a little Greek vibe to it, you know.
Yes.
But they instead they chose, you know, some electric guitar.
Right.
So.
It's Wonder Woman. Good enough isn't good enough. It's Wonder Woman. It needs to be great.
I'm honestly trying to think, now that Jay brought it up, of other Hans Zimmer musical cues. I'm sure there's tons of them.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
He's that guy from Die Hard, right?
John McClane versus Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, falls off a Nakatomi Plaza.
Right.
All right, so we're talking about Wonder Woman, and you mentioned the Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot, Chad. You wanted to posit a question, I think, to the group.
Heck yeah, and I know there are lots of folks out there that dig the DC universe of movies. I'm not traditionally amongst that group, but I will say I always thought the casting of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman was one of their pitch-perfect moves. And as we're reading this book by Tom King and Daniel Sampere, it's very clear to me that this is the Gal Gadot Wonder Woman. When I was growing up with George Perez and Phil Jimenez, their Wonder Woman was decidedly different, still powerful, but not as influenced by an actor as this particular portrayal. And I was wondering, what other characters do you think have been forever changed by a movie performance or by an actor that's just assumed the character, not just the role, but the character itself?
I was trying to think of whether or not Christopher Reeves did that with Superman, but I really don't think so because, as Christopher Reeves became popular with his rendition, I mean, movie-wise, I think we all think of Christopher Reeves when we think of Superman. But, like, if you look at the comics at the same time, there wasn't a lot of crossover where he kind of looked like Chris. He still was beefy and bigger, and eventually you got the version that John Byrne came out with a Man of Steel, and it kind of looks a little bit maybe in the face a little bit, but no, like
he didn't look like Reeve until Gary Frank started drawing. Gary Frank draws Christopher Reeve. That's who Gary Frank draws.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know. There's that good Superman Secret Origins series. I can't remember if it's like 8 issues or something like that, but Gary Frank draws it. And when Jeff Johns came in to write the book, they actually he and Richard Donner wrote the book for a while. They wrote, I want to say, Action, and they definitely made it the Christopher Reeve. Like the Fortress of Solitude is the movie Fortress of Solitude and all that stuff. But no, yeah, I think for that era, was it Kurt Swan that was doing it from the 50s until about the 70s, and he was always sort of barrel chested and really George Reeve from the TV show kind of looked more like him. He almost looked 35, 40 years old. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But
the Kurt Swan, Wayne Boring era. You know, I was going to say that the biggest influence on Superman's look actually came from the Max Fleischer cartoons. It's somewhat similar, but I think that Max Fleischer and those cartoons from the 1940s really did a lot to kind of clean up what Superman should look like. You know,
Did you catch Lois Lane in the new Batman Amazon Prime cartoon?
I did. I thought that was a call out. She's like asking questions. It's probably my favorite episode of that Caped Crusader. Is the one where they release Firebug and he starts the fires and and Batman has to save the people from the burning building. I thought that episode was great. It was my favorite episode of all of them, which is weird to say given all the episodes were awesome.
Yeah.
J.A., what do you think? Is there anybody that you think influenced?
I'm drawing a blank, to be honest. I can think of actors who embody the role of the character so well, like Christopher Reeve in Superman or Chris Evans in Captain America, that you can think of it. No one else could ever be Captain America. I think that's part of the issue that Disney's having with Marvel MCU is that you've got all these guys that don't want to do it anymore, or if they're going to do it, it's going to cost you a lot of money. How do you tell the same stories? It's not a comic book where you can just age them gracefully over 50 years.
But you do bring up a good one from those MCU movies. What about Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man? I mean,
I thought he's Dr. Doom, right? No.
I mean,
Dr.
he
Doom.
is now, but you're talking about...
I think I'm the only person on the internet who just absolutely f***ing hates that. I hate it. He's so goddamn iconic as
I don't think you're alone in that, Mikey.
It is a Hail Mary bit of stunt casting like I have ever heard in my life.
It's multi-universal chicanery, and I'm fine with it. You'll see it.
I don't know if it is. They call him Victor
Right.
Von Doom.
But
and
Hey, it could be done. But Dr. Doomness aside, that whole Matt Fraction Salvador LaRocca run, they just implanted Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Like, gone went the 1980s perms, gone went the roller skate shoes. It was just from then on, you know, he had all Robert Downey Jr.'s quirks and mannerisms and everything else. So I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I think, if you're looking at MCU, sort of, you see TV shows aping the books more than books aping the TV shows. I'm thinking, of course, of the Hawkeye TV show, which was straight up Matt Fraction's Hawkeye and Kate Bishop and
Oh, yeah. That was actually my problem with the Avengers Hawkeye, was you had that Matt Fraction template, and they went with Jeremy Renner, who was a much different vibe. But then it came around by the time we got to that Christmas Hawkeye TV show.
back when Batman came out, Batman '89, they started to talk about whether movie releases based on comic books, whether it increased readership, and they still don't know if it does or doesn't because the continuities are different. I think it actually would benefit them to do imprints, and they've shown that it does with DC's recent, Superman 78 and Batman 89 and Wonder Woman 77. There's a market for these books that take place in a familiar pop culture kind of thing. And it would benefit Marvel to actually do a line that takes place in the MCU universe. The only thing you run into is like continuity things. And, if they do something in the comics, they have to carry. And that happens with Star Wars all the time. Star Wars, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. And like but like the IDW Star Trek comics series or two of them that are, it's Chris Pine, and it's that, they actually use their likenesses, and it runs off of that continuity, and that's fun if you like that realm. So
Right.
You know.
I think that you bring up a good point, and I think in closing this segment, I agree with you, Mikey, that I feel like there is a wasted opportunity with not putting out a series, maybe in retrospect, for those folks that really love the MCU, based around, the MCU universe. What about that story in between Avengers and Avengers 2 where they go around hunting down all the rest of Hydra? Couldn't you do a 6-issue miniseries about that and put it out in trade? I'm sure there's people from the MCU, because the story's already been told. You already kind of sort of know, so you just, shove that in, and there you go. I can see that there would be a market for something like that.
I would like to see Zack Snyder's Justice League trilogy continued in comic book form, because I think everybody complains about that movie, but I think if that movie was a comic, they would have eaten it up. I really do. I think for some reason they should continue it and let him get it out there, and hopefully it would sell or whatever, because it's interesting, and I because it has Wonder Woman in it.
Yeah. What better way in comic books where the budget is the cost of a pencil and some Bristol board?
Yeah, and the great thing about comics is you can get away with things in the comic book that looks normal. When you try to put it on the screen, it looks stupid, like we saw in the Deadpool Wolverine, where you get comic book accurate Wolverine, and he looks really stupid.
That was so magnificent. I was so glad they did that.
Give the fans what they say they want and show them how dumb it looks.
That's right.
Well, one thing we hope you don't think is dumb is the rest of The Last Comic Shop. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks with our review of Tom King's Wonder Woman Volume 1 Outlaw. So stay tuned for that.
Hi, it's Carlo Calantuan, Last Comic Shop podcast listener and comic book tragic here in the Philippines. Mabuhay! When I'm in the US, I'm always on the lookout for a good deal on boards, bags, boxes, and all other manner of comic book related supplies. And that's why I love to go to bcwsupplies.com and use the promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off of all my orders. Not only do I get a discount on everything I buy at BCW, but I'm able to support the podcast when I use LCSPOD at checkout. So if you're in need of comic book supplies, head over to bcwsupplies.com and use the promo code LCSPOD. Oh, and guys, I'm still waiting for that Tressie review. Come on, when is it?
Do you long to see an exiled Greek god summon an army of heroes to wage war against his crazed mutant cyborg nemesis? Do you feel a deep yearning to witness the daily life of an evil, rebellious dominatrix in her natural habitat? Do you wish Saturday morning cartoons had more lizards with revolvers and wasps with shotguns? Well, you're in the right place, partner, because we've got all that and more. Lords of the Cosmos 5 is frothing at the mouth with testosterone-drenched battle cries, red-hot revenge plots, guns a-blazing mutant military ops, and some good old-fashioned unicorn torture. Now on Kickstarter.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our Read Pile Review. Yes, that time of every single show where we talk about Tom King books. Actually, you know what? We're almost to our 200th episode. There has to be close to 10 Tom King books that we've done on this show. I mean, we've done Vision, we've done Mr. Miracle, we've done Strange Adventures, we've done
Rorschach,
Human Target,
and Gotham City Year One. So that's, 6? This is now going on 7? And we might even have another one before the end of the year. I know in DC Ember I was trying to get these guys to read Danger Street. We'll see. We'll see if that's too much Tom King.
It's so good, man.
Tell us what you really think.
We'll see. We'll see if it's too much Tom King in 1 year. But who else worked on this particular series with Tom King, J.A.?
Okay, so art was handled by Daniel Sampere, beautiful art. Colors by Tamu Moray, and the ever reliable Clayton Cowles on letters.
He does.
And then, of course, we've had a host of extra cover artists. The direct market edition of this trade was done. The cover is done by Stanley Art Germ Lau. So,
ooh, are you going to get that? Are you going to snag that? Are you going to?
We'll see. I don't know. I have to see if I can find the direct market trade. It's hard to find direct market stuff.
You just want to see whether or not there's a lot of abs, right? I mean, let's be honest. You dirty old man. All right. In any case, Mikey, why don't you do the honors as our DC aficionado with giving us a 10-cent synopsis? Traditionally, yours are a dime.
That's right. They are a dime. In this series, Wonder Woman runs afoul of the Heritage Foundation. As basically it's being told as a story to Wonder Woman's daughter Trinity, and it's the tale of Wonder Woman versus a gent called the Sovereign, who fancies himself the king of America. And it turns out that there's been a clandestine group that's been running the country since the Revolutionary War days, and he is just the next in line for that. And he has taken her and is trying to break her and is unable to because she's f***ing Wonder Woman. You could believe that. So that's it.
Wow, but you are missing a kind of a key component of all this, which is what it starts off with. One of Wonder Woman's fellow Amazonians gets in a bar fight and ends up killing a bunch of dudes after, unwanted sexual advances, we'll see. Yeah. And it turns out this other Amazon is the one that Wonder Woman beat so that she could be the representative to originally go to America. And
there's a bunch of anti-Amazon sentiment going on there, and it's kind of reflective of the overall sort of DC storyline that they're doing. If you're reading Superman in action, there's a lot of sort of Superman came back from Warworld with a bunch of Warworld refugees from other planets and aliens, so aliens are taking over, and the Earthlings and the Americans aren't all very happy about that. And the same thing kind of flows over with the Amazons, and when this Amazon murders a bunch of people in a bar, the sentiment sort of ends up overflowing into Diana basically becomes an enemy of the state, and it's a smear campaign. It's a big thing. It's a thing.
So it's again, Tom King, pulling from some things that he knows. Again, he former CIA agent, so he talks a lot about military tactics and the chain of command and some things that only he can talk about. And it's kind of pulling from the headlines, people being pulled apart from families, being forcibly
deported is the word you're looking for.
There's a guy named Sergeant Steele, and don't know a lot about him as not somebody that's a huge DC fan. And sometimes Tom King plays fast and loose with some of these characters in his books. Is Sergeant Steele a dickhead in every other comic he's ever been in?
Well, he's a carryover from when DC purchased the Charlton Heroes. So he came along with Peacemaker and Question and Blue Beetle. He's a PI in those books, and in this one he's sort of a government operative. So he's not always an asshole. It's just he's a government man. And in this case, he does what he's ordered to do, and he believes that what he's doing is for the betterment of the country, and that may or may not change as the series goes along. So,
though he did change throughout the series, he became a pig.
Yeah, well, that's true.
At a certain moment,
he's been kind of rebooted a couple of times. I know they did something with him with the whole OMAC checkmate thing back with like Project Cadmus and all that stuff in the New 52 and things like that. So it just depends on who's writing. But so like King does have a tendency to do that. Like he'll write books that if people are really hung up on continuity and things like that, it's going to bother you because he does put his own stamp on things, and he will change characters and sort of. You could just imagine that these people are having a really shitty week when he writes. They're the same people, but human beings are broken. You know what I mean? So it's like where Stan Lee added sort of like humanity in the fact that Spider-Man's an awkward teenager and he has home problems. Tom King comes in and they're like, these are superheroes and they have PTSD, and this guy's
I was going to say there's a healthy dose of PTSD in a lot of his characters.
I think it makes sense. She's still Wonder Woman, but people are still, for some reason, the fanboys are still pissed off at this book, and I can't figure out why. I think she's very Wonder Woman. I think he really, really touches on the essential things that make Wonder Woman in this book.
But there's a moment where she goes, the difference between me and Batman and Superman is Superman was killed and Batman was broken, and I stayed undefeated.
Yeah.
I think that might be when she's breaking the lasso of lies.
Yes.
What did we think of that? I like that. Is that a new thing? Is that a thing to this series, or has that been around, the lasso of lies?
There's a lasso of submission that Superwoman uses, the evil version of Wonder Woman from Earth 2 or Earth 3 or something like that, one of the Earths.
Also, how long has Darkseid's daughter been a thing?
Yeah. I mean, she's just like bad guy version Wonder Woman, like, you know, the equal but opposite, which is, again, always a cool idea for any superhero to have. You know, your Venoms, your Reverse Flashes. I mean, it just works. Speaking of that Wonder Woman, there's a huge fight that happens at the end of this particular trade between her and what's her? It's a weird
Giganta?
name. No, that was cool.
Yeah.
Where she
runs the gauntlet through a bunch of characters.
Whatever the Darkseid daughter is. I think
it Grail? Is it Grail?
Grail, that's right.
Yeah.
Grail. So Wonder Woman and Grail throw down in this massive fight. And like the Hans Zimmer little note thing, I actually was not a fan of the no thank you.
Oh, I like that.
I got what he was doing with it. And eventually during this fight with Grail, it's a huge no thank you. And I just thought that was a weird thing to say in the middle of a fight. You can say anything else you want. No thank you is not what I would say, regardless of who I was punching.
It just shows that she's polite. That's all.
Chad,
She has class, manners. I enjoyed this series. That's because I enjoy Tom King books. And going back to the point Mikey was making earlier about the Tom King of it all, he does play fast and loose with characterizations. And as long as you don't care about the characterizations, he does bring that level of humanity to characters, even the bad guys. That is commendable, unless you have cared about that bad guy before and their previous backstory, and or other side characters, or King is just doing what he wants. Also, I still go back to me being a cranky old man, and I'm reading this book, and my niece is crawling up in my lap to see what I'm doing, and it's like, oh, I'm reading a Wonder Woman book. Watch, this guy's gonna commit suicide right here. And there are parts of it that I really didn't need to see in a Wonder Woman book. It goes against my personal, I think you're big name superheroes. Those books should be all ages, and this should be like an Elseworlds or, some other line of more grown up stuff. But with those gripes and the fact that Steve Trevor has no spine whatsoever, I don't know. I guess that's what you get for having Steve Trevor being the character that he is.
Right,
he's the Wonder Woman damsel in distress.
I never understood Steve Trevor. Honestly, at one point, it was probably a good idea to have him around, but after a while, he just became superfluous. I just didn't think he was necessary anymore. I actually honestly like Wonder Woman's interactions with the other members of the Justice League. If she's going to play off the opposite sex or whatever, I'd rather her be playing off Batman or Superman or somebody else. It's just weird for me.
And there's hints that his behavior is going to pay off in the Absolute Power storyline. He may be he's playing Sarge Steel a little bit. I mean, that he's playing him a bit because he knows that Diana's not going to break. And he knows that. And I meant to say too, Chad touched upon the soldier committing suicide there. I thought it was a really, really interesting way to look at toxic masculinity and all that. It might have even been a little heavy-handed. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought the villain was a little bit over the top with the misogynism. It was okay, I get it. Women are bad. They should.
I guess it doesn't
in the home in the 1950s, but I just thought it was, man, this is really cookie cutter. Are you doing this on purpose? Then I thought, I went totally meta on it. It's is he meant to be a really stereotypical comic book villain, one-dimensional? Because he's really women are bad, men are good. We have to crush Wonder Woman because she's a woman.
See, I would have thought that too if I didn't know that those people are on Twitter every day. Those people actually exist. It's not. Yeah. I don't. They actually are real. They exist. They probably have said that about this book. They've probably said that about Wonder Woman in general. I'm just not surprised by anybody's behavior anymore. But
But
it's just
you bring up,
it's really Law and Ordery ripped from the headlines kind of storyline.
right, and you bring up a good point. I mean, there's that whole scene is predicated on the fact that this guy, you know, he retreated from the battle, which is probably my favorite issue, just simply because I love any issue where like the Hulk used to fight the army and like it's just Wonder Woman being the Hulk and fighting the army and smashing around Abrams tanks. I thought it was great. I was like, this is awesome. But this dude is like one of the people that retreats from that battle. Yeah, Wonder Woman's cool. Like, she had us beat that day. I'm cool. I'm going to be getting a paycheck. And then he like puts the lasso of lies around him, and he's like, no, you should feel really bad. Your pride and your dignity should be, hurt.
You were emasculated. You were emasculated by this woman. She
right. I know I've taken in recent memory even writers to task for writing stories where things are so over the top and so out there and so almost predictable. And I feel like there's a part of me that wants to chastise Tom King here, for the one-notedness or for, like the allegory isn't hidden very well in here and some of the things he's trying to address that are going on in the country currently and things of that nature. But at the same time, I trust that Tom King is going to give me a story that's going to have that payoff. And maybe I'm giving King a little bit more credit than I would currently for a Chip Zdarsky or somebody along those lines. But here it was okay.
If I may, Chad, because I read through issue 10, issue 11 starts that crossover event.
Absolute Power, which is really good.
Power. Okay, so through issue 10, they still haven't said why that original Amazonian went crazy and killed all the men in the bar or wherever it was. The Sovereign is still in power. They haven't broken Wonder Woman yet, but she's gotten her team together and something's about to happen. Yeah. That being said, there is a standalone issue that alludes to what's going on with Wonder Woman, but it has nothing to do with it, with Wonder Woman and Superman going to this mall in the Andromeda Galaxy, the mall that has everything, to buy Batman a birthday present, and that issue is the shit. That issue is so good.
And it actually it's funny, and but at the same time it says a lot about both characters.
Yes, it's funny, it's poignant.
Is it?
There's a Booster Gold sighting.
So this is later in the series, like this is like issue.
The next issue 7.
Okay,
wow. So the trade goes through issue 6. Issue 7 doesn't have anything to do with the story. It doesn't progress the story at all. They allude to what's going on because Superman brings up, do you want to even talk about it? She goes, no, I don't want to talk about it. Let's just go find a present.
So it's the double date issue. It's the same thing that Tom King did with Batman and
it's a little Superman. It's a little levity between heavy.
Well, Tom King does that excellent. Like if you've never read the double date issue,
there's a whole thing about validating the parking for the invisible jet.
Yes, it's just and it's like what, she asked him, "What do you do?" And he goes, "Well, I just usually fly here." So
yeah, and Superman's like so sharp. Like it's two friends hanging out, and it's a friend who knows that his other friend is going through some rough shit, saying, "Hey, do you want to go get a beer?" And she's like, "Sure." Like it's really just that equivalent, I don't want to talk about it. Let's go do something nice, and what they end up actually getting.
Yeah, and the fact that they went to a mall just shows you Tom King's age, because nobody in their 20s or their 30s are going to write about a mall, right?
Well, it's true, though. I mean, I didn't get to read that issue, but another favorite part of this whole series was actually there's an issue where she meets with all of the other basically Wonder Woman sidekicks, all the Wonder Girls, and my favorite one was her experience with the eldest of the Wonder Girls, her sister, Donna Troy, and they're playing video games. And, you hang out with Superman and Batman. I hang out with Gar. and Cyborg, and we just play video games all the time. I just thought that was great.
She refuses to let them help, and they all want to help. And they're like, tell you what, we're going to challenge you, and if you lose, you're going to let me help you. And each one has a different challenge. In the video game one is hilarious because you wouldn't think it. You'd think it'd be like fight each other or and they do. There's a weapons challenge, and then there's a and they're all very fitting with the characters. And that's where I tend to think that Tom King might know these characters way better than fans give him credit for. I think he actually knows the nuts and bolts of these characters extremely well.
Well, no, I'm with you, Mikey. He gets the essence of these characters, but sometimes it's in those small details that he doesn't care. But yeah, I love that whole process. It's the whole getting the band back together in reverse. It's telling the band to stay home.
Yeah.
And like she's gonna best them in all these different categories, telling the band to back off.
And at some point she'll be up there doing the solo by herself, and suddenly the drums will come in, the bass will come in, because the band is coming.
Right. On your left.
Yep, on your left.
But there are a lot of moments in here that I noticed were like cribbed from like MCU movies or things like that, and let's just add another one to the list. But as long as you do it well, like who doesn't love the on your left, like the Avengers Assemble moment? Like, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one moment that we always love in the Last Comic Shop is our ratings. And that's coming up right after these commercial breaks, so stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop right after this.
Madison is on the air.
What happens when 20-something Madison is zapped into old-time radio shows? No technology.
I want to go to voicemail.
No Starbucks.
Don't call yourself a coffee shop if you only sell drip coffee.
And no one is PC.
I don't need no lip from.
Were you about to say woman? Because I'm wearing a gun and I have no idea how to use it.
Madison on the Air serves to highlight the way we were and the way we are today, with original radio drama scripts adapted to include the modern-day Madison as she joins famous characters from radio's past, including Sergeant Joe Friday.
Just the facts, ma'am. I've never actually said that.
Marshal Matt Dillon.
We're not having a shootout with a 10-year-old kid.
I'm too woke to be a part of this.
Superman.
I didn't realize how cold it would be flying like this.
I have to get into the higher atmosphere.
And many more. Visit us on the web at madisonontheair.com or find us pretty much any place podcasts can be found.
You talk so old-timey. I have no idea what you said, but it's adorbs.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where we're going to smack our bracelets together. It's going to make a big clang sound, and we're going to give you a rating. It's going to be a rating scale. I don't even know if J.A. is going to give us that, like, as a clang sound. I mean, he could. I don't know, but he always gives us a 1 out of 4 scale for these things. And what have we got for this week?
This is a rating after my own heart. I even mentioned it on a previous podcast when we were talking about Wonder Woman. Issue 4, there's this great arc where she's taking this Make-A-Wish Foundation child who loves Wonder Woman out to Themyscira and to see the Amazons and all this stuff. He's dying of leukemia. And they get in the invisible jet and they're flying out over the country, and it's just two people sitting in the air with nothing around them. And I remember saying that's what it would look like if you're in the invisible jet. There'd be no jet. It'd just be you sitting. That's why if you had action figures, it's very easy to make the invisible jet. You just fly your action figure around in a seated position. So it's invisible jets.
Yes. I always wondered how, like, did they ever explain how, like, she knows where the certain controls are? Like, couldn't you not see them? Like, you'd be like, I don't know.
That comes up in a later issue because the Wonder Girls, or whatever what are they called? The Wonder Girls?
Yeah, like
one of them is they're trying to start the jet and she hits the eject button instead.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and start off with Chad. Chad, what did you think? How many invisible jets are you giving this one?
I'm going to go 3.75 invisible jets. Like I said, I enjoyed it, but you can see some of the flaws in here that may or may not be resolved by the time this storyline runs its course. But yeah, there were sometimes with the story arc moments that I thought, oh, I remember that from that MCU movie where they're in the elevator and they're fighting a bunch of people. Well, this is a little bit more on the nose than I thought it could have been. But then for every minor quibble that I had, like the art, which we haven't gushed enough about in this book, is wonderful. The Wonder Woman portrayal is definitely the Gal Gadot beauty and power and grace. That part is just wonderful. And like I said earlier, I trust Tom King to tell me a good story when it's all said and done. And I don't see any signs of this letting me down. And so as much as I'm like, yeah, okay, it's equal opposites, lasso lines, whatever, I'm secretly like, oh, that's kind of cool though. Like, using that to run the government. Like, I like that idea, but it's on the nose. But it is kind of awesome. So, for everything I dislike, there's 3 more things that I do like. And so, while it's not perfect, I think this is definitely fun. And I could see why people continued reading as many issues as they get their hands on. I'm hoping to track those down as well so I can see how this thing goes. So 3.75.
Oh, there you go. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to give it a little bit lower than Chad. I think I'm going to be going a solid just 3. I actually haven't read a lot of Tom King ongoings. All of my Tom Kings have been in maxi series. All of them have had a beginning, a middle, of end, and these 12-part or 6-part, storylines, and there's a definitive end point that I'm coming through, and this is not that. I read bits and pieces of his Batman run, but I didn't read all of it. And so this was my first experience with hey, he's got to have a long storyline that he might need to take, 25 issues to finish. And at times, as a result of that, I did feel like, to Chad's point, it was a little bit much. Things were just wham, chauvinistic, wham, masochism, wham, misogyny. And I'm just I get it. These are important things to talk about, but I'm used to Tom King maybe disguising it in a way that's a little bit more not just out there. And maybe that's he didn't want to do that in this series. I don't know. I think honestly the only thing I had a massive problem with was the no thank you. I just didn't get that beat. I wish you would have said something else. I just don't. Politeness be damned. I just didn't get it. I was no. I don't want a warrior goddess to say no thank you. I just don't. I mean, I get the hope thing. That's awesome. But yeah, I liked issues. I really liked issues. I liked the issues where she threw the Abrams tank around. I loved the 2-page spread of the invisible jet when she's shaking down Sergeant Steele. I thought that was awesome. I loved how dudes would come up to Wonder Woman and just think they were just going to push her around, and she punched them in the face. That was awesome. And as somebody that, if you're out there and you don't read Wonder Woman on an ongoing basis, or you haven't read Wonder Woman in a while, I think this is a very approachable series. So I don't see any reason why anybody that's a fan of the Wonder Woman character shouldn't be able to pick this up and enjoy it. You don't really need to know a lot going into this. But yeah, it just was no thank you. It's too many of them. The 3. J.A.
So I'm really glad we read this series, and I'm glad I continued reading, because I think I had sent some texts when I was going through sort of the first trade, and I was not really on board with the big villain. I just thought he was too one-note and way over the top. But he starts to get a little bit of nuance, but the story gets a lot better. Cheetah shows up, and you had that wonderful issue, of course, with Superman that we talked about earlier. So on the whole, I would say this is a very worthwhile read. The art is incredible. Panel layouts, full page spreads. Wonder Woman has never looked as regal and stunning as she does on this page. Dare I say, maybe even better than Chad's Gal Gadot, I dare say. So I've got to give it echo Chad and give it a 3.75. probably dinging it just slightly because I thought the villain could have been a little bit more nuanced. But as Mikey Wood pointed out, there are people exactly like that on Twitter, which is probably one of the reasons I don't go on Twitter much these days.
Yeah.
The only reason I go on is so I can send you photos of U2 albums, Mikey.
Yeah, which is great, and I look forward to that. I think you and I are the last ones who are still into it as much as we are. But
Mikey, what's your call?
I might. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I'm going to say 375 because I think he writes big stories that may not be collected successfully in this manner. I've been reading this since the first issue and having read up to currently. I just don't know if the collection works as far as, like Andrew said, as far as a beginning, middle, and an end. I think it's a beginning and a middle. So in this collected edition, it may not. It may leave some people kind of sitting, but as you continue to go on, it's going to pay off more and more and more and more. So I enjoy that, and he tends to write in kind of like 12-issue arcs. So I wonder if actually he's already up to 11 or something. I know he gets to at least 14 because it's been solicited. So yeah, I'm going to say 3.75 because there may be some heavy-handed things here and there. It may be a little too on the nose, but I get what he's saying, and I think it's important that he says it. And using Wonder Woman as this character of like very understated toughness. Like she doesn't stand there and act like someone who can like wipe out an entire battalion if she needs to. But if they put her to it, she's like, all right, well, you brought this on yourself. And she wipes out an entire battalion and doesn't kill a single one of them or anything like that. She just does what she does, And I've seen different Wonder Woman variations of making her more of a warrior, less of a warrior. She snapped Maxwell Lord's neck at some point, things like that. And I think this Wonder Woman is very feminine and very beautiful and very strong, like extremely strong in wonderful ways. So I'm sorry, I'm being verbose again, but so is Tom King, so it's okay. So it's 3.75.
Okay, Mikey.
There you go.
You're passionate, Mikey. You're passionate about Wonder Woman. And one thing that we're always passionate about is our recommendations. Yes, this is the time of every single show where we give you other comic books in addition to Wonder Woman by Tom King, Volume 1. Called Outlaw, as well as the other issues that are out. You can probably still find them on comic book stands, maybe. But if you're at that comic book shop, here's some other things to check out. We're going to go ahead and start off with J.A. Scott. So, J.A., what do you got for us this week?
I am recommending Miss Fury, The Sensational Sundays, 1941 to 1944, by Tarpe Mills. She's the first female superhero created and drawn by a woman cartoonist. She actually predates Wonder Woman by about a month and a half. And the character is a wealthy socialite. Where have we heard that before? She doesn't have any superpowers herself, but she was gifted this cat suit by her father that has magical powers. When she puts it on, she gets increased strength and speed, and the panther skin gives her the ability to fight crime and whatnot, because it was imbued with voodoo ceremonies by an African witch doctor or something. So she goes after a bunch of reoccurring villains. There's a mad scientist. There's Nazi agents, because this was made during the war, and it also provoked a lot of controversy because she tends to wear a lot of revealing outfits. I think it's pre-code Sunday strips.
Oh yeah, that's pre-code, baby. And that was what they did. I mean, they looked at it and they were like, what's going to sell papes? Nudity sells papes. I'm serious. No, it's like, whether it's that, Phantom Lady, like all of those characters. I mean, Wonder Woman. Heck, she runs around in a bathing suit. Like that was. Well,
there's the big controversy in 1947. She was drawn wearing a bikini. And 37 newspapers dropped the strip in response. It ended up running till 1952. So 1941 to 1952, a pretty good run. And the collection that I am recommending won an Eisner for packaging.
Is it your graphic album reprint or no?
Best collected archival work, I believe it was.
Is that a BS Eisner Award, or are you going to give him props for somebody coming up?
It depends on who wins it.
All right.
Sensational Sundays.
I do know that you can get some Miss Fury books now out of Dynamite. Dynamite came out with some Miss Fury books over the last couple of years.
The one I'm recommending is out of IDW.
Okay. Yeah, it's a license that pops up from here and there. It's a nice Golden Age character. So, yeah, awesome. Speaking of Golden Age characters and, well, I guess Golden Age incarnations of those characters, my recommendation is another Wonder Woman book, but in the vein of the original Wonder Woman from the Golden Age. It wasn't released back then. It was actually released in the 1980s around the time of Crisis of Infinite Earths. It is Wonder Woman Forgotten Legends. It was written by Kurt Busiek and the late, great Trina Robbins, who passed away just this past year. Again, all the art done by Trina Robbins in that classic 1940s-esque style. It tells the story of Wonder Woman's mother, who's looking into a crystal ball into the past and remembering a tale of her daughter fighting Queen Atoma, who comes from a subatomic realm, who comes with a bunch of like women soldiers and tries to take over the United States and steal all our uranium, and then kidnap Steve Trevor and takes him into like this alternate universe, and then Wonder Woman has to go there with like this like little girl, I don't know, that runs around with pigtails after her, and it's an interesting story, but like again, it's lovingly told. And what the wonderful thing about the pairing of Kurt Busiek and Trina Robbins on this particular book is both of them have been known as comic book historians. And so again, the fact that they were writing this story in the 1980s, yet it has all of the hallmarks of a 1940s classic Wonder Woman story, that's quite an accomplishment. I mean, again, to put it in that same time period and like not miss a beat, and to get all of the callbacks of some of the original Wonder Woman issues. There's a lot of like that, you know, wink, wink, nod, nod, sadomasochism stuff in here, like people getting slightly spanked on the bottoms and stuff like that, people getting tied up, kind of like you would see in the classic Wonder Woman comic books. You know, it's not out there as much as, you know, some of the stuff that was in the Tom King and like in terms of hitting over the head with it, but it's a slight wink, which I think is kind of cool. And it might not be for everybody. You might think that this is cornball. You might think this is cheesy. But if you're a fan of Wonder Woman over the years, I really think that reading Forgotten Legends, especially with this very unique, very cartoony type artwork, I think it's the kind of Wonder Woman that you could show to a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and they would get it. It is an all ages kind of Wonder Woman. It doesn't have folks committing suicide halfway through the pages. So check it out. Forgotten Legends. It's super neat. Chad?
Alrighty. So I alluded to this at the beginning of the show. So my recommendation for this week is going to come out of 2017. It is the Commandy Challenge. The basic premise was Video assembled some of the greatest creators that DC had available at the time, including people like Tom King, who wrote this book. He's actually teamed up with Kevin Eastman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fame, and Freddie Campbell on their chapter. Neil Adams has a go at things. You get people like Keith Giffen, Gail Simone, Peter Tomasi, James Tinian, Jimmy Palmiotti, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Dan Jurgens, a ton of different names. But each chapter, you would get one writer paired with traditionally one or maybe two artists, and they were all given a map at the very beginning. They kind of drew straws as to which section of the map they had to encounter. And one writer would start the story, you know, from dealing with a cliffhanger, and they have to end on a cliffhanger. And then they would pass the baton to the next creative team. And so it's great. It reminded me initially of there's a tradition in Daredevil whenever there's a new writer. The old writer on their way out the door just puts Daredevil in an impossible situation and makes the new guy work their way out of it. It was like that, but each issue. And so you get Commandy facing down a ticking time bomb for a nuclear disaster. You get Commandy getting his organs harvested and having the next writer have to come in and deal with that. Commandy being dropped off cliffs and all sorts of other. There's just tons of craziness, and the art style changes from issue to issue, but the balls to the wall action never stops, never changes in the Commandy challenge. It's a wonderful celebration of one of Jack Kirby's or one of those creations in a way that is have a hell of a ride.
There you go. All right. Well, Mikey, why don't you finish off? What's your recommendation?
I'm recommending another Tom King book that I think people really need to kind of maybe give it a second read to. It got a lot of really bad press, but I'm recommending Heroes in Crisis. And when I say Heroes in Crisis, like there was a 9-issue miniseries written by Tom King, but there's some other issues of things that kind of play into it, like Green Arrow 45 and Batman and Flash issues 64 and 65 alternately. So Batman 64, Flash 64, Batman 65, Flash 6, that add more layers to this story. Like a lot of people hated that because of what they did to Wally West, but I really, really liked it. And I thought they handled Wally West and what he went through in a really sort of emotional and touching way. Like it really, really worked for me. And it's just such a genius idea. The idea of there being a place for heroes to go to get therapy because of what they see and what they experience, because that's something that they don't really touch on.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check out Heroes in Crisis, Mikey. Originally, I was one of those folks that got kind of bent out of shape about what they did with Wally. I won't lie. Wally was my Flash, and so I wasn't a fan of that series. But I think in retrospect, I think I might have been too harsh on it, so I might have to go back.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because if you look at what Wally's going through, you're not supposed to like it. Like, he's going through a difficult time. He's still that good person that because of his powers, his connection to the Speed Force, something terrible happened. Like, he didn't do anything, like something terrible happened. He tried to fix the something terrible and just in a bad way, and he was in a bad place. And the whole thing, it does deal with a lot with PTSD, and it does show heroes saying things that you're not used to superheroes saying, like Superman showing actual weaknesses and things like that. And sometimes it pays off to read things a second time or whatever. So,
well, speaking of reading things a second time, we hope that you'll come back to the Last Comic Shop for our upcoming 200th episode. That's right. It's coming up in just a couple short weeks as we'll be rereading, because, again, we've all read it, but we've never read it as an official episode of the Last Comic Shop. We're going to be reading Watchmen. We're going to have wonderful guests back like Mikey Wood, George from Short Box Summary, Nicole's going to come back for a segment, Ethan's going to come back for a segment. All of our favorite guest hosts that have been on a myriad of episodes in the past, they're all going to come back, read Watchmen, and hang out. And we hope that you'll hang out with us. And you can do that by rate, reviewing, and subscribing over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. Don't miss any of the episodes leading up to 200 and well beyond that, because we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going until Chad tells me we can stop.
Good luck with that. And while we may be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the last comic shop, so we encourage everybody to get out there to your local shops and look for things like Miss Fury by Tarpe Mills from IDW, or Wonder Woman Forgotten Legends by Busiek and Robbins. Maybe that Commandy Challenge is up your alley, or even Heroes in Crisis, another Tom King work. But all that more ways for you at your local comic shop. Make sure you stop by and check those things out, and then come back to our socials. We are at Last Comic Shop on all our X's and Blue Skies, etc. And Jay, what can people find on our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com?
Always have links to our merch store where you can get t-shirts, tote bags, coffee mugs with Last Comic Shop podcast logos on it. This week, a special on invisible t-shirts. That's right. It's an invisible Last Comic Shop podcast t-shirt. I guess that really means you're just walking around without a shirt on, but no. You are wearing one. It's just invisible.
You know, I tried that once with invisible pants at the mall, and they asked me to leave.
I can see why they would throw you out.
Any case, Mikey, why don't you throw out where folks can save some money on their comic book supplies?
Sure. You got comics? You want to dress them up all fancy? You want to get them all together in a safe space? go to bcwsupplies.com and get yourself some supplies for your comic books. They have bags and boards and boxes. They have regular ordinary cardboard boxes. They have fancy pants boxes made of plastic. They have those bags that you have to tape. They have bags that you don't have to tape because they already have stick them on there, and they're awesome. And we happen to have a coupon code. If you give the old coupon code LCSPOD, you will get a wonderful little discount for your supplies. And it also shows your support of this show and these guys who put on this show for you every week. And never ask for anything. They don't ask for anything.
I'm going to be very blunt, guys. We don't have a Patreon. We don't have any of this stuff. We don't keep content from you where you have to pay for that stuff. We have a promo code. Save some money on some comic book supplies. We've got awesome merch. Grab yourself some merch. All of that stuff helps us keep the lights on here at the Last Comic Shop and bring you this show every single week. And we hope that you come back next week. Until then, I was the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith, Jay Scott, and the wonderful Mikey Wood. And we hope that you stay safe, stay wonderful. That's right. And remember, if somebody punches you in the face, you can tell them no thank you, but I would just punch them.
Yeah, no thank you to that.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
The Last Comic Shop podcast was a 2024 Black Angus production.